Welcome to our channel. Today we delve into the dark side of parenting with 3 disturbing true horror stories that will send chills down your spine. These are not tales for the faint of heart, but real-life nightmares that will make you question everything you thought you knew about safety and security. Viewer discretion is advised. Tonight, we confront the unsettling truth. Sometimes the monsters aren't hiding under the bed, but in the faces of those we trust most. Our first story takes us deep into the suburbs where a young couple, the Millers, were about to face their worst nightmare. It's Friday night, and after weeks of planning, the Millers have finally secured a babysitter for their 6-month-old daughter, Lily. The babysitter, a seemingly sweet and responsible girl named Sarah, came highly recommended by a trusted neighbor. Relieved and excited for a night out, the Millers bid farewell to Lily and Sarah, unaware of the horrors that awaited them. The night started ordinarily enough. The Millers enjoyed a lovely dinner, their laughter echoing through the restaurant. But as the night wore on, a knot of unease began to twist in Mrs. Miller's stomach. She couldn't shake off a creeping sense of dread. Unable to bear the anxiety any longer, Mrs. Miller convinced her husband to leave the restaurant early. The drive home was agonizingly slow. Every rustle of leaves outside the car window sounded like whispered threats. As they pulled into their driveway, a chilling sight stopped them dead in their tracks. The lights in their home were off, plunged into an unnatural darkness. Fear coiled like a serpent in their guts. They fumbled with the keys, their hands trembling as they unlocked the front door. The house was unnervingly silent. No sound of Lily's laughter, no soft lullaby from Sarah. The air hung heavy with a strange, almost metallic scent. They called out for Lily and Sarah, their voices tight with terror, but only silence answered them. Then, a faint sound, like the muffled whimper of a wounded animal, reached their ears. It seemed to be coming from the direction of Lily's nursery. With hearts pounding in their chests, they crept towards the nursery. As they reached the nursery door, the horrific truth revealed itself in a scene that would forever scar their souls. Sarah, their seemingly innocent babysitter, stood over Lily's crib, her back to them. In her hand, she clutched a long, gleaming pair of scissors. The scissors dripped a viscous, dark liquid onto the floor. Mrs. Miller screamed, a primal sound torn from the depths of her being. Sarah spun around, her face a mask of cold, calculating malice. The scissors clattered to the floor, leaving a crimson stain on the pristine white carpet. The Millers' nightmare had only just begun. Our next story takes us from the familiar horrors of home to a place where fear itself takes root, a haunted house. The Harper family, eager for a fresh start, moved into a charming, albeit somewhat dilapidated Victorian home on the outskirts of a sleepy town. They were a family of dreamers, drawn to the house's faded grandeur and whispering promises of a brighter future. But the house held secrets, dark and ancient, that were not meant to be disturbed. From the moment they crossed the threshold, a palpable chill settled over them. It wasn't just the lack of central heating, it was a coldness that seeped into their bones. Little did they know, they were stepping into a nightmare far beyond their wildest fears. At first the signs were subtle, a flicker of movement in the periphery, whispers that seemed to dance on the edge of hearing, objects disappearing and reappearing in inexplicable locations. They dismissed these occurrences as tricks of the light, drafts, or simply their imaginations adjusting to their new surroundings. But as the days turned into weeks, the occurrences grew increasingly disturbing. One evening, as the family gathered for dinner, the lights began to flicker violently. The shadows in the room seemed to twist and writhe, taking on grotesque and menacing forms. Then the laughter of children, high-pitched and filled with an unsettling glee, echoed through the house despite the fact that the Harpers had no children of their own. The children's laughter seemed to emanate from the walls themselves, bouncing off the antique furniture and sending shivers down their spines. The laughter grew louder, more insistent, morphing into a cacophony of shrieks and giggles that set their teeth on edge. Terrified, the Harpers huddled together, their faces pale and drawn. The laughter reached a fever pitch, then abruptly ceased, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. As quickly as it had begun, the unsettling episode was over. But the Harpers were left shaken, their sense of security shattered. As the paranormal activity escalated, the family found themselves caught in a terrifying game of cat and mouse with an unseen entity. Doors slammed shut on their own, disembodied voices whispered their names in the dead of night, and icy hands reached out from the shadows. The Harpers soon discovered that their home had a dark and tragic history. Our final story tonight takes us on a journey into the depths of parental fear, into the heart of a nightmare where the line between love and terror blurs. This is the story of the Thompson family and their descent into a horrifying ordeal that challenged their sanity and shook their faith to its core. It all began subtly, almost imperceptibly, with their 8-year-old son, Ethan. Ethan, a once vibrant and cheerful child, gradually withdrew into himself. His once bright eyes grew distant, clouded with an unnerving darkness. He began having nightmares, horrific visions that left him screaming and sweating, his small body racked with sobs. At first his parents, Mark and Julia, attributed Ethan's behavior to childhood anxieties. They showered him with love and reassurance, hoping to chase away whatever demons haunted his young mind. But Ethan's condition only worsened. His nightmares intensified, spilling over into his waking hours. He would stare blankly into space, his eyes fixed on some unseen horror, his small body trembling uncontrollably. His once sweet and gentle nature transformed into something dark and unsettling. He lashed out at his parents, his small hands transformed into claws that scratched and tore. His voice, usually so full of laughter, took on a guttural, almost demonic tone, spewing forth obscenities and threats that made their blood run cold. Terrified and desperate, Mark and Julia sought medical help. Doctors ran countless tests, but each one came back inconclusive. There was no logical explanation for Ethan's sudden and terrifying transformation. Frustrated and frightened, Mark and Julia found themselves facing a chilling possibility, that their son's condition was not medical, but spiritual. They consulted priests and paranormal investigators, anyone who might offer a glimmer of hope in their increasingly desperate situation. The consensus was chilling. Ethan was possessed by a malevolent entity, a demonic force that had taken root in his innocent soul. The rituals to exorcise the entity from Ethan were harrowing. The air grew heavy with the smell of incense and fear as the priest chanted in ancient tongues, his voice echoing through the darkened house. Finally, after an agonizingly long and terrifying ordeal, the entity was expelled. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe for more chilling stories. Stay safe, and remember, sometimes the scariest things are closer than you think. The darkness is always listening, waiting for its chance to seep into our lives. Be careful who you trust, what homes you welcome, and the entities you may unknowingly invite in. Sleep well if you can.